Happy Halloween, travelers and tourists. My name is Mark, and I am the local disaster tour guide. That's right, I am a storyteller whose paranoid fear of spiders is totally not showing up in today's video. Welcome to a journey through the fantastic world of TTRPGs like Pathfinder and Starfinder. Today, in honor of Halloween, I wanted to talk about some of the scariest monsters that Paizo has given us through Pathfinder 2nd Edition. And to help me do that, I have brought a special guest, friend of the channel. Would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Howdy, my name is NoNat. I run the YouTube channel NoNat1's, where I talk about, surprise, Pathfinder 2E. And when Mark approached me for like a Halloween collaboration and we settled on the spooky monsters, I was so excited because I don't get to talk about like specific monsters and specific lore and stuff like that too often on my channel. So getting a chance to talk about it, just, tis the season. So spooky monsters are sometimes my favorite kind of monster. I either like running something super silly or super really creepy. So this should be fun.
This is the time of year where you get to have some fun at your player's expense, But before we dive into this list, don't spoil your picks. But I'm just curious, did you have a particular approach in how you selected your monsters, or what was your criteria?
So my criteria was mostly flipping through different bestiaries and adventure paths until something caught my eye. And especially I tried not to use the same source more than once. I think I have one or two that are from the same book, but otherwise all five of mine are from different books. And it was typically flipping through the artwork until an artwork caught my eye, and then I double checked to see if the flavor made it even creepier than the artwork. Because artwork is one thing, but what it actually does is really what entices me to a full-on scary monster, both in its flavor text and its stat block.
I am convinced that the artwork on one of my picks was designed by Cthulhu himself.
Ooh.
Because I am serious. I don't know who at Paizo came up with one of my picks, but that artwork terrifies me to no end. But I agree. Good artwork is a critical portion of it. So, all right. Well, what we will do is we will dive in, and we're just going to go back and forth. And I do not know NoNat's picks. He does not know my picks. So there may be some overlap. There may not. But we're going to talk a little bit about what we picked, why we picked it, and maybe a little bit about how storytellers can have some fun with these monsters in their games. So, NoNat, kick us off. What is your number 5 scariest monster for Pathfinder?
All right, so my number 5 monster is actually something I talked about on my channel well over a year ago, and that's the Grimstalker. This is a fey creature that on its own, like, if you just look at its stat block, it's like, oh, this thing is not that scary. It's got a couple of primal spells and, like, a vine attack, but otherwise, an equal level party, not going to have a problem with this thing. But where it's scary is not against heroes, but against the people of the world, a standard village of farmers and whatnot. Because they won't even know this thing is there. See, the Grimstalker has an innate hatred of civilization and the expansion of humanoids into nature. And it's also incredibly non-confrontational. This thing isn't going to come sprinting out of the woods and attack you. No, rather, it has really slow-burning plans, mostly on farming villages. See, the Grimstalker will wait until the cover of night and sneak out of the forest into the local farms and gardens. And there, it will plant the seeds of aggressive carnivorous plants, like a bloodlash bush. And then it'll just go back into the forest like nothing happened. A few weeks, maybe a month will go by. You won't even tell something happened until one day you're pruning your begonias and one of them suddenly lashes out at you. And if you're just a normal little commoner, one hit from one of these things might be the end. So this thing just thrives on sowing fear, almost both physically and metaphorically, sowing fear throughout entire civilizations and villages to the point where they abandon them, calling the land cursed and aggressive, all without ever once showing its face.
I like that. What source is that from? Because I don't think I've seen that one.
I think that's Bestiary 2.
Okay.
It is Bestiary 2, page 137.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
As you were describing it, I was like, this sounds perfect for like the abandoned farmstead or something like that. The it looks calm from the outside, but something sinister is behind. I like that. I'm gonna have to check that one out.
It's a good one. It's a great little mini boss to plan for like a level 2 or 3 party with like a mystery chapter around.
By the way, if you're one of my players and you're watching this video, please stop. I'm getting ideas.
All right, Mark, what do you got for number 5?
Okay, so my number 5 is actually one that I've used a couple of times in my most recent campaign. It's called the Herexen. It's from Bestiary 3 and from Book of the Dead. It is a type of undead where a cleric or a champion, if they rebel against their deity and like die in this terrible act of blasphemy, they come back as an undead creature with a just like burning hatred for the church they used to serve. And so like there's a few different variants. Bestiary 3, Book of the Dead have some different versions of this, but they have a few commonalities. One of them is just like if you are part of the church that they used to be part of, they are very good at killing you. They get all kinds of bonuses to take down the church they once served. And they come with they have divine magic, but it's usually twisted in some fashion. And you'll get things like Heretic Smite, Reap Faith, but their universal ability, every version of a Herexen has this. It's called Final Blasphemy. When they die, they explode in an AoE harm effect that scales based on the creature's level. So they're basically just like this negative energy bomb that you can run into a group of PCs. And I've come close to a couple of character kills with these things, if you can't tell. But what I especially love about them is they are very easy to turn into a personal monster if you have any kind of divine caster in your group.
Interesting.
So like you have a player who works for the Church of Pharasma. Well, here is a heretic undead that used to work for the Church of Pharasma, and suddenly this is a very personal fight, both from the villain's perspective, because it's motivated to go after what it used to serve, and from the player's perspective, because that character's going to be like, what? This should not be. So, but I've used them a lot lately in my campaign, and they are very effective.
It's nice. They seem very flexible since they can be of any religion, any faith. You can have a lot of fun with those. I feel like you could almost sometimes spin them to be a good guy, quote unquote, if it's like a Herexen of Lamashtu who wants to get back at the evil deity, so will help the party do good things.
I have had that idea. I haven't gotten to use it yet, but I agree that that is a segment of the creature that Paizo hasn't explored, but they definitely leave it open. So,
fun.
All right. So let's move on to our number 4s. What's number 4 on your list?
My number 4 is possibly the simplest monster on my list, and it's just terrifying in a visceral way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about the Kokogiak from Bestiary 3.
Okay.
At first glance from far away, this might just look like a really big polar bear. But as you get closer, you might notice, hey, why does it have 8 legs? Hey, why can its neck stretch 20 feet to bite me? This is a huge-sized polar bear that's basically a bear spider with a stretchy neck, and it's just, like I said, viscerally terrifying if you come across this thing in a blizzard that it's just gonna maul you. It's so fast, it can swim. But possibly, if that wasn't all bad enough, it has one more special ability. The Kokogiak is something of a trickster, and its special ability is that it can use its vocal cords to imitate the sounds of its prior victims. And it mostly lives in areas that are commonly in a blizzard. So if your party is traveling through a snowstorm and you hear the sound of a man screaming in the distance, that man could have died years ago, but his killer is right in the storm.
That is awesome. I love that.
It's just like the trickster thing is super cool, but just the idea of a bear with 8 legs is just, it sends the shiver down my spine thinking about it.
Pretty much anything plus spider equals terrifying.
Yeah.
I think that's a safe bet.
True. Like, even if you don't have arachnophobia, there's just something, it's so inhuman compared to anything else, you know?
All right.
What you got, Mark?
So my number 4 is, I think this one is a little more psychological horror for me. The Attic Whisperer from Bestiary 2. It is a child-size undead, and usually when people first encounter it, they will hear like a voice singing or doing nursery rhymes, stereotypically up in the attic kind of thing. The premise behind this is it is the animated body of a child that was abandoned. And it's psychological horror at its finest. But essentially, it is this lonely undead child that is looking for someone to play with, but inevitably, because it is undead, it will try to kill whoever it lures to it. And so its abilities are things like Steel Voice, kind of like the forget what you just called yours.
Oh, the Kokogiak?
Kokogiak. It can steal voice similar to that. It can steal breath, and it has an aura of sobs, where this creature just sounds so lonely and sad that you become stupefied listening to it cry.
Oh, man.
It is a debuff machine.
Yeah.
Just in the form of like this little kid that got abandoned. So.
Oh, man, it's level 4. This little kid is a level 4 creature. That's wild.
So, slightly traumatizing, but very creepy.
Oh, yeah, you can have a lot of fun. Like, the lead up to encountering this thing almost seems like it would be the most fun part. Like, the fight, it's cool. The debuffs are awesome. But also, bringing the party having to bring themselves to put down this reanimated kid. Like, oh, God.
So
right,
I apologize to everyone watching this show who is now suffering trauma, but it's the Halloween episode.
Happy spooky times.
All right, but let's move on to our number 3. What you got for us?
All right, so this is my. It's another just physical gross one. This is probably the most gross out horror on my list, but I figured I got to have at least one that's just horrifying, like. Kind of gory, kind of. I'm talking about the Empress Boreworm.
Ooh.
Now, if you're unaware, boreworms are like this big. They are just, all they do is eat. Honestly, similar to a real life earthworm, they just happen to have sharp teeth, and they're not dangerous on their own. You can squish one beneath your boot. However, if roughly 10,000 of them gather and congregate together, they become a swarm, which is incredibly terrifying because that's 10,000 little sets of teeth. Now, boreworms are always eating. They cannot stop eating. So what happens if they run out of food? The boreworms will begin to eat one another. The big mound of 10,000 boreworms will consume each other in an almost fight to the death until only one worm is left, having eaten all of its kin. At that point, this little tiny worm grows to huge in size as becomes an Empress Boreworm. As a reminder, a huge creature takes up 15 by 15 feet on a grid map. So this is now a huge worm with a massive set of teeth that also just leaks acid out of its body. This Empress Boreworm, now big enough to traverse the world, starts moving in a straight line to find a new home, eating literally everything in its path. Now, the Empress Boreworm has one fatal flaw, and that is that it can never eat fast enough to gain more energy than it's expending. Because it never stops moving and never stops eating, it will inevitably, within just a few days, die. Which is good news. Except when an Empress Boreworm dies, 10,000 boreworms erupt from its corpse. And this happens whether it dies of starvation or if you happen to kill it in combat, spawning a full boreworm swarm, try saying that 5 times fast, spawning a boreworm swarm in its space and dealing 5d10 acid damage to everybody around it. Which, if you just leave those boreworms there, they'll eat until they can't eat anymore, then they'll eat each other, and you'll have a new Empress Boreworm.
The circle of life is creepy and disgusting.
I guess it is a circle of life, but and if there was anything in the real world that I guess we're out of food, we'll eat each other. Don't worry, guys. After I eat you, I'll die, and then you'll come back.
I think swarms are a classic creepy monster, and that is a good twist. I like that. The swarm to one giant monster back to swarm, and the poor fighter or barbarian that lands the killing blow.
Especially if they don't know that the worms are going to come out. Like, the acid damage is bad enough, but all of a sudden you just killed this level 7 creature, and now you're fighting another level 5 creature. And it's a swarm, so unless you have area damage, you're done.
Awesome. I like it.
All right. What do you got, number 3?
All right. So my number 3 is probably the simplest one on my list. But I love this monster for the brutality that it brings. And that is the Redcap. It's a fairly classic monster. It's a type of fae that walks around with a red hat on its head. And the hat is red because it dips that hat in the blood of the people it kills and draws power from the blood of different creatures that it has slain. And they're like the size of gnomes, but they walk around with these massive sides and iron boots. And their fighting style is just like sickeningly brutal. It's like they are there for the slaughter, they are there for the kill, and I love these things in a fight because it's just like one of their abilities is called Stomp, which is they just run up and kick someone and make them bleed, and just their entire presentation is just this creature that is obsessed with murder, and they're brutal and they're horrible, and my players hate fighting them, but they're fun to fight too.
Oh, man, you aren't kidding. Yeah, I mean, sometimes the simplest thing is the scariest. It is a small person with a blade that wants to dip its hat in your blood. That's horrifying. Especially if they attack it like a swarm. I mean, not an actual swarm, but like multiple of them. That would be terrible.
My poor players got attacked by 4 of these in our most recent session.
They're shockingly strong, too. Like, I would not have assumed the Redcap was a level 5 enemy attacking for a D10 plus 10. My God.
Yeah, if you're ever looking for just a straightforward, relentless killer, they are one of my go-to favorites.
Very nice.
All right. Let's move on to number 2.
Number 2 already, going fast. All right. This one is back on psychological horror. It still has a little bit of gore, because I don't know, I just find like body and physical horror definitely a bit more creepy to me. But I also love the psychological element of the Manananggal. A Manananggal, sorry. The Manananggal looks like a person. It looks like a standard humanoid, and in fact, they live in cities and
Mm-hmm.
villages. They make friends. They build relationships. They're a member of society. Except at night, they can rip their top torso off of their legs and sprout wings out of their back so they can fly to somebody else's building, creep inside, using their proboscis-like tongue, stab them anywhere in the body, and drain them dry, killing them, and then fly back, put its wings away, reattach itself to its legs, and just return to its normal day. This is a game of werewolf or mafia or Among Us.
Yes, yes.
In your TTRPG, and it could be a great little side story that can just pop up at one point. Especially if the players are all taking off, the adventure is mostly taking place in the same hub city. If corpses just start showing up with no real identifiable cause of death, if you see a tiny little hole in somebody's arm, you're gonna, the first thought isn't that's what killed them. That's the smoking gun. So it can be really hard to even learn what you're dealing with. So first you have to figure out you're dealing with a Manananggal, but then you need to figure out who is the Manananggal, which is its own terrifying story. And I love this monster. I adore a mystery and the anxiety, the paranoia that it breeds among players. If you can do it well. Mysteries are very hard to run, but I do think the Manananggal is written in such a great way that it does a lot of the GM's work for them. Why are there no fingerprints on the door? Why do they never enter the house? Because they flew in the window. Yeah, really, really cool creature.
I'm blanking on that. There was a first edition Pathfinder adventure where you fight a lot of mosquito monsters, and that was reminding me of that adventure. But that one is middle of the swamp somewhere. This one is dropped right in the middle of a city.
Anywhere.
With so many potential who is it's.
Oh, right. Especially you drop one of these into Absalom. How do you find it? Unless you catch it in the act, you have no way of knowing.
That is awesome.
All right, your number 2. We're coming down to it.
All right, so for my number 2, I wanted to do some kind of very high-level monster for this list, but I've got a series on Monsters of Myth right now, so I was like, okay, I've got to find a monster that's not from that book, so that I'm not double-dipping my material. But after some thought, I settled on the Jabberwock. Which is from Bestiary 2, which is one, it's pulled from the old poem that you used to read in high school, the Jabberwocky. It's based off of that, but it's like this insane dragon-like creature if it was created by the eldest of the Fae when they get mad at humans. They are described as trying to think how it's put. Essentially, when the eldest want to pass judgment on the material world, they send one of these. And it is a chaotic mess of oh god. Sorry, they're hard to describe.
Yeah.
One of their core abilities is called Burble. And basically, these creatures begin to speak in a variety of languages, including some languages that they don't know, but somehow have the ability to speak in. And the cacophony of different languages together either deals sonic damage to everyone or causes everyone to go confused. And that's kind of their replacement for their breath weapon. And when they fly or attack with their wings, it basically creates difficult terrain in the air around them, because of how powerful the winds are. And they've got all of your high-level monster, like regeneration, ridiculous attacks, all those kinds of things. But basically, if you've ever wondered what a dragon would look like if a Fae creature was mad at you, that's what you get with the Jabberwock. And I both love the throwback to the high school poem and also the it's actually a really interesting fight. So
I feel like we would be remiss to not mention that this thing can shoot fire beams out of its eyes at a range of 60 feet. Oh my word. Yeah, like this thing isn't like traditionally scary, but the fact that it is just a pure chaotic evil force that can send an entire city into a confused mess and just decimate the landscape if it ever felt like it is terrifying in a completely different way than the rest of the monsters we've talked about. That is, yeah, there's fear in chaos, and this is its incarnation.
And I love this one because this is a great creature to drop at the end of a campaign. You know, this is the kind of thing that a villain can unleash on the world, or this can be a great centerpiece of the last battle or the last few battles of a campaign, and I think it's well designed for that kind of role.
I think so too. Yeah, it doesn't have a whole lot of like bang you're dead abilities, which can feel unfair. Don't get me wrong, the DCs are insane. Like a DC 51 Arcana check to identify this guy. But there's so much to play with it. All right. Well, let's flip this on its head. Since you wanted me to go last, let's hear your number one, Mark.
Okay, so this is where I swear to you Cthulhu is moonlighting at Paizo. Right. This is a monster from the Bestiary 1 that has been pulled directly from my nightmares and planted onto a page. It is called the Gogiteth. It is a large size aberration that is basically Yes, you found the picture!
Oh!
You're welcome!
No! Continue.
It is a mess of eyes and fangs and spider legs, and it is a giant aberration spider, and it is my nightmares made manifest. Paizo, I do not know who made this. I simultaneously hate and love whoever did. As far as I can tell, I think this is a Paizo unique monster. I have not been able to find it in other sources for other games, so I'm pretty sure somebody from Paizo came up with this.
It might. Everything I look up comes up with Pathfinder. Interesting. So, but also, why?
Now that you've had a moment to process how this thing looks, we get to talk about how you use this thing in a game. Because essentially it is a combination of a couple of tactics. You will notice in its stat block a couple of abilities called Skittering Assault and Skittering Reposition, which kind of gives you an idea that this is a fast-moving creature that has a lot of different movement abilities. It's hard to pin down. It's hard to kind of corner, if you will. Okay? The other thing that it's kind of built into its stat block is Improved Grab and an ability called Carry Off Prey, which is essentially, if it grabs someone, it can run off with them. So this monster is designed to run into your party, grab the poor party wizard, and drag them off screaming at speeds the rest of your party cannot keep up with.
Oh, God. And it could do that all in one turn because of Improved Grab. So one action Jaw Strike and then Skittering Assault, which is 2 actions strike 3 times. This thing can pick you up and run 120 feet in one turn.
I would like to issue a public apology to NoNat's players for anything terrible that happens to your party after this video goes live.
No, that would be ridiculous. Don't get it twisted.
But this creature is simultaneously just like, I hate it for the way it appears, and it's just, the thing is terrifying to me, but also as a game master, it's so great to drop these on your party.
Yeah. Oh man, and it looks annoying to fight too. Like skittering reposition. Just when you move up to it, it moves 10 feet away. That's just come on. The poor barbarian. Holy cow! All right, is it time for the piece de resistance?
It is time. Let's hear what your number one is.
So mine is something I picked before I even knew what level it is. A little bit of background. I, Brogan, have what's known as thalassophobia, which is the fear of the ocean or what lies beneath. So lo and behold, when I was flipping through the Book of the Dead, and I found the Nasurgeth, a gargantuan undead shark. A gargantuan undead level 20 shark. It is chaotic evil. And it's easy to be like, don't worry, it's stuck to the ocean. No. When night falls, this thing comes out of the ocean and has a 60-foot fly speed. It flies from the ocean and just bombards cities and villages with negative energy with spells like 8th level harm and eclipse burst. This thing, it can plane shift to the shadow plane and back again. It has true sight, and just trying to get close to this thing is a near impossibility. It has a permanent 60-foot aura around it that if a living creature starts their turn or enters it, they take 4d6 negative damage, and if they're in the water, an additional 2d10 cold damage, and enfeebled 1, and pulled towards the creature. Not only that, if it's underwater, that 60-foot emanation of water is also constantly under the effects of a 4th level darkness spell. So you can't see this thing. It hurts you just to be near it. Oh, and if that wasn't enough, every time you hit it with piercing or slashing, negative energy just seeps from the wound, dealing 8d8 negative damage to everybody within 20 feet. This thing is just a giant anglerfish shark that can leave the ocean, which is my ultimate nightmare.
That is amazing. Frantic Game Master notes, players, please stop listening to the video.
Like, I don't even know how you fight this thing. I honestly, my only complaint about the Nasurgeth is that I don't think the artwork does it justice. It's cool, it's creepy looking, but I don't think it gives the full scale of the creature, because gargantuan can mean anything from, I want to say, 4x4 squares on a grid or bigger. So this thing can be like 100 feet long. Like, just imagining seeing that breach the top of the ocean and take off into the sky is just nightmare fuel.
The sequel to the Meg is looking really intense.
It's undead. It's an undead shark. I hate it. Oh, that's my number one. Oh my god. Anything to do with the water just ruins me.
Awesome. Well, so that brings us to the end of our list for this video. But to everyone who is watching this, go ahead and jump into the comments section. We want to hear what some of your favorite creepy monsters from Pathfinder are. Or feel free to throw in ideas from other games as well. It's Halloween. Let's see the creepy stuff you all can come up with.
Yeah,
but
I mean, there's so many monsters to pick from.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's why I just found the first 5 that like really grabbed me. I could have made a list of 30.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, to definitely jump in, let us know. But before we get out of here, NoNat, is there anything you want to pitch? Anything coming up on your channel that we need to keep a lookout for, or just let us know what's going on?
By the time this video goes live, I will have started the most daunting series on my channel to date. I'm gonna try to cover all 155 archetypes in Pathfinder 2e, giving each of them their own unique video, going heavily in depth with them. I don't know if that's gonna be possible, but it sure is a lot of content. So if you're looking for archetypes explained, I think if this goes up on Halloween, I should have Acrobat, Archaeologist, and Beastmaster out by that time. So go check those out over on the NoNat1's YouTube channel and subscribe while you're there.
Awesome. Well, NoNat, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you joining me for this conversation.
Anytime.
And to everyone who has been watching, thank you for joining us as well. We're glad you're here. Thank you for being part of the conversation, and have a wonderful day.
Later.